Hello, this is Gina Piscatelli giving a lecture for A&P2 students at Madison Area Technical College. And this presentation deals with some extra items that we did not cover previously in study question 14, specifically about the liver. So the liver is located on the right side in the abdominal cavity and the stomach on the left. And the liver and pancreas are not directly connected to the alimentary canal. They're considered accessory organs that secrete fluids into ducts that lead to the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. The ducts in the liver are highlighted in green, and they carry bile to the duodenum. These ducts include the left and right hepatic ducts, the common hepatic duct, and then the common bile duct. The cystic duct also contains bile, and it leads to the gallbladder, where extra bile is stored until it's needed. The pancreas is located inferior and posterior to the stomach, and its duct joins the common bile duct before entering the duodenum. This diagram also introduces the blood supply to the liver. Note that the liver receives oxygenated blood from the hepatic artery, which is a branch off the celiac trunk, which is attached to the abdominal aorta. The celiac trunk is not labeled in this diagram. The liver also receives nutrient-rich blood from the hepatic portal vein, which forms when intestinal vessels or capillaries merge, and the hepatic portal vein leads to the liver, where it branches into smaller and smaller vessels. The lobes of the liver include the right lobe and the left lobe, which are very obvious in an anterior view. This picture is shown on the left, with each lobe outlined in yellow. And then if we looked posteriorly at the liver as well as inferiorly, you would see the other two lobes of the liver, the caudate lobe and the quadrate lobe. The quadrate lobe is actually more inferior, and it's close to the gallbladder. Both of those are labeled as well. So there's 4 lobes to the liver. The histology of the liver is quite unique. It includes cells called hepatocytes arranged in plates around a central vein. Each central vein is in the middle of a lobule. So the lobes of the liver consist of many lobules, and these central veins are going to actually carry blood to the inferior vena cava. A plate of hepatocytes is outlined in yellow on the lower diagram. In between the hepatocytes there's some white spaces, and those white spaces are blood sinusoids, and they carry venous blood. So this diagram better represents, or at least depicts, the various histological features of the liver. It just shows it in detail because it's a drawing. So first note that the hepatocytes are these beige cells, and they're arranged in plates that I've outlined in yellow. They secrete bile, and the bile then goes into a network of ducts, starting with the bile canaliculi. So the little green dots that you see interspersed between the hepatocytes, there's one, there's one, there's one. Those form the beginning of the canal system, and they're called bile canaliculi. A bile canal then leads to the hepatic bile duct, which is going to carry bile inferiorly towards the small intestine. In addition, this diagram shows some sinusoids, and those sinusoids are in between the plates of hepatocytes. These sinusoids are carrying blood in the opposite direction that bile flows, so the blood is going to go superiorly. So let's trace the flow of bile first through the various canal networks. So the hepatocyte first makes the bile. It goes into the bile canaliculi, then into the lobular bile duct, and eventually this bile duct, which is part of a lobule, will lead to either the right or left hepatic duct. Then the right and left hepatic ducts merge to the common bile duct, and that common bile duct, of course, leads to the small intestine. Now we're going to trace some blood. I'll just show it in red because it's really visible that way. Now we start from the small intestine. I'm not dealing with the arterial supply. Here I'm going to talk about the hepatic portal blood flow. So from the small intestine, capillaries merge to form these portal veins, to form the hepatic portal vein. And these branches of the hepatic portal vein then branch off further to surround the outside of a lobule. So the blood is flowing in this direction, and it enters the sinusoids, and then a central vein, and then the hepatic vein joins up with the inferior vena cava to return to the heart. Now, of course, there is arterial blood supplying the liver as well, because the liver is going to need oxygen. And the aorta would come down approximately here. And then from the aorta, a branch comes off called the celiac trunk. And the celiac trunk leads to the hepatic artery. And then the artery branches. So the artery branches into these individual vessels that are also on the outside of the lobule. But the hepatic portal system is the most important for us when we're considering the digestive system, because what happens is amino acids and monosaccharides that are absorbed by the small intestine will enter these veins that merge to form the hepatic portal vein. And then, of course, the hepatic portal vein branches extensively, supplying small veins to the outside of each lobule. And then, of course, the sinusoids are located in here. And then the blood goes into the hepatic vein to the inferior vena cava and back to the heart. So the liver is the first organ that receives these nutrients. For that reason, the liver has some additional digestive functions, some of which you're already familiar with. One is that the liver can process nutrient-rich blood that comes from the small intestine. In doing so, it regulates our blood glucose, because the liver can perform what's known as gluconeogenesis. It can make glucose from amino acids and fatty acids. It also performs glycogenesis, and that is the synthesis of glycogen, which happens when we have excess blood glucose. And the liver can also perform glycogen breakdown or glycogenolysis, and that will produce some glucose when our blood glucose is low, like between meals. Also, because the liver receives blood directly from the small intestine, It can detoxify the blood in the sense that it can take nitrogenous compounds and make urea. It removes the amine group and those amines become part of urea. Eventually, of course, the kidney is going to be the one that removes the urea from the bloodstream. Another thing excuse me, that the liver can do is it can store fat-soluble vitamins that it receives from the hepatic portal vein. So those are the additional digestive functions of the liver to make up for what was not in our last lecture. Thank you.